Hey guys, welcome back to Beyond the Box Score, and I am your host Hayat. Today we're breaking down 4 college basketball matchups on March 7th, and this slate has some really interesting spots if you start digging into the numbers and the situations. We've got Louisville heading into Miami, a UConn versus Marquette matchup that could have big implications in the conference race, the massive rivalry game North Carolina versus Duke at Cameron Indoor, and then an SEC battle with Alabama versus Auburn where seeding and momentum could matter a lot. This is pure analysis and opinion, no guarantees, no promises, just breaking down the slate and connecting the dots the same way I would if I was studying these games myself. And real quick before we dive in, the channel is getting really close to 2,000 subscribers, which is honestly crazy to see. If you enjoy these raw breakdowns and daily slates, hitting subscribe helps the channel a lot as we push toward that 2K milestone. Alright, let's get into it and start connecting the dots with the first matchup. Louisville versus Miami. The lean here is Miami moneyline with Miami plus 1.5, and let me walk through why. Louisville is headed into Coral Gables, Florida to play Miami, and while I'm looking at this line right now, Louisville is laying 1.5 points at Louisville minus 1.5. And this is one of those spots where I just sit back for a second and I start asking myself, why does this Louisville team continue to get this kind of line respect? Because they do. Louisville continues to get line respect, and look, I'm not sitting here saying Louisville is a bad team because I actually think they're one of the best teams in the ACC. But some of these Louisville lines this season have just been inflated, and that's where things start connecting for me, because when you see a team consistently getting that respect but the results don't match the price, eventually the numbers start telling the real story. Louisville is below .500 against the spread, and if you've been riding with Louisville in big games this season, you've been losing money, and that's a trend that sticks in my mind because it tells me the market expectation for Louisville keeps getting pushed higher than the results they're actually producing. Then you layer in the road spot here. Louisville is 3-7 straight up on the road this season, and that's where I pause again, because if this matchup plays out like a typical road test against a team that's playing confident basketball, that 3-7 straight up road mark becomes extremely relevant. Now flip the other side and look at Miami. Miami is playing hot basketball right now. They've covered 6 of their last 7 games and they've won 8 of their last 10 games. And when a team is both winning and covering at that type of rate, it usually means the momentum is real and the market is still catching up to it. What's funny is I actually tried to fade Miami recently. I liked SMU in the Miami-SMU game. I thought that was a sell high spot on Miami and a buy low spot on SMU. I made that case because I felt Miami might finally hit a regression wall there, but what happened? Miami went out there and took care of business against SMU and had control of that whole game. That moment kind of stuck with me because sometimes when a team answers the exact spot where you expect them to fall back, that's when you start reconsidering the way you view them. One path I see here is this game being played on a neutral floor, and if this matchup was played on a neutral court, I'd probably lean Louisville to win the game. I think Louisville is that good. But the location matters here because Louisville is headed into Coral Gables, Florida to play Miami, and Louisville already being 3-7 straight up on the road this season adds a lot of weight to that environment. If this game plays out like Louisville's other road games against strong competition, the pressure starts shifting toward Miami quickly. And then the current number matters too. Louisville laying 1.5 points means Miami sits at Miami plus 1.5, and when you combine Miami plus 1.5 with the fact that Miami has covered 6 of their last 7 and won 8 of their last 10, and you add the road struggles from Louisville at 3-7 straight up, suddenly the side that connects for me is the home team with the momentum. And there's another piece that I keep circling back to. If Louisville is below .500 against the spread because some of their lines have been inflated this season, then Louisville minus 1.5 on the road might be another example of that exact dynamic. So if this matchup plays out like Louisville's recent road form and Miami's current momentum trend, Miami being at home in Coral Gables becomes the swing factor. That's why I'm sticking with Miami plus 1.5 and Miami moneyline with plus money. Yeah, the lean stays Miami moneyline. UConn versus Marquette. The lean here is UConn to win and cover. Lay it with UConn, and let me talk through why. When I look at this matchup between UConn and Marquette, the first thing I see is the record contrast because it jumps off the page immediately. Marquette is 11-19 on the year and 6-13 in conference play, while UConn is 27-3 on the year and 17-2 in conference play. And when you see 27-3 versus 11-19, and 17-2 versus 6-13, the gap in consistency starts shaping the entire game discussion. Marquette did just beat Providence 78-56 in their last game, so that's something to acknowledge, because anytime a team wins by 22 points you at least take a moment to ask if momentum is building. But then you flip to UConn and they just beat Seton Hall 71-67 in their last matchup, and what stands out there is not just the win but the bigger picture context, because UConn needs a win here to ensure at least a share of the regular season title. So now we're talking about a team that is 27-3 overall, 17-2 in conference play, and still has a motivation layer because a win ensures at least a share of the regular season title. The seeding situation is still complicated because St. John's is part of the equation. The seeding is still dependent on St. John's, and St. John's could get the 1 seed based on tiebreakers, so the focus for UConn has to stay locked into this game. One path I see here is a motivated UConn team approaching this matchup with urgency because the regular season title scenario is still active. Now look at Marquette's side of things. Marquette is 11-19 overall and 6-13 in conference play, and they're likely going to be a bottom 4 seed, which means they would be playing on March 11th in the opening round on Wednesday. That alone tells you where the program stands right now this season. Because historically Marquette usually produces 20-win seasons, and even the worst example mentioned is a 19-win season in year 1 under Shaka Smart. So when you're sitting at 11-19 it becomes clear that this year has been a major step back compared to the program standard. Now there is the senior day angle for Marquette, and that matters emotionally. Ben Gold is one of the seniors, Chase Ross is another key senior, and Sean Jones is also a senior who was injured early in the year. And sometimes senior day creates those emotional spikes where the energy in the building gives a team a push. But I keep asking myself, if this matchup plays out strictly based on the season-long profiles, does that emotional boost override the performance gap between a 27-3 team and an 11-19 team? Because UConn has also shown a pattern when they face weaker competition on the road. The last 3 UConn road wins have been by double digits. That trend sticks with me because it suggests that when UConn travels against inferior competition, they don't just win, they separate. And the last time UConn didn't win a road game by double digits was January 17 against Georgetown. That means you literally have to go back to January 17 vs Georgetown to find the last road game where UConn didn't win by double digits. So if this matchup plays out like UConn's recent road trend where the last 3 road wins were by double digits, and if the season record difference of 27-3 versus 11-19 plays out the way it has all year, the path that connects for me is UConn controlling this game. The motivation layer with the regular season title race, the road trend where the last 3 road wins were by double digits, and the last non-double-digit road win being January 17 vs Georgetown all line up in the same direction. Even with Marquette coming off a 78-56 win over Providence and having senior day for Ben Gold, Chase Ross, and Sean Jones who was injured early in the year, the larger season profile keeps pulling me back toward the same side. So if this game plays out like the last several UConn road spots where they separate late, the result makes sense. That's why the lean stays UConn to win and cover, lay it with UConn. Quick pause for a second. If you've got an even one lean you like so far from these breakdowns, whether it was Louisville versus Miami, UConn versus Marquette, or one of the spots we've talked about, take 1 second and hit the like button. It really tells me you guys enjoy these full slate breakdowns, and it helps the video reach more people who like this kind of deep analysis. And if you're new here, make sure you subscribe because the goal right now is to push the channel past 2,000 subscribers, and we're getting really close. Alright, let's jump back into the next matchup. North Carolina versus Duke. The lean here is Duke minus 15.5. Let me walk through why this one connects for me, because when I start thinking through the layers of this matchup, the number, the form, the location, the revenge angle, it all kind of starts pointing the same direction in my head. So first thing I'm looking at is the setting. North Carolina headed into Cameron Indoor to play Duke, and Cameron Indoor is one of the toughest places to play in the country. That environment alone already shifts the way I look at a big spread like Duke minus 15.5. And that's the number in most places right now. Duke minus 15.5 in most places, total sitting at 144.5, although you can find 14.5 available in some places. Bet Rivers offering 14.5, Valley Bet offering 14.5, but most sportsbooks showing 15.5. So we're hovering right in that Duke minus 15.5 range with a total of 144.5, and that's the framework I'm starting with when I imagine how this game could play out. Now the first thing that jumps to mind for me is the previous meeting. The first meeting played at North Carolina, and North Carolina was plus 6.5 in that game. And if you remember that game, North Carolina went down early. It looked ugly early, honestly. But then North Carolina made a comeback, and what happened at the end? North Carolina hit a buzzer beater to win. Absolute chaos ending. So when I think about this rematch scenario, one path I see here is Duke coming into this one with that memory fresh in their minds. North Carolina already beat Duke earlier in the season, and that win came via buzzer beater. That matters psychologically, especially when the rematch is happening at Cameron Indoor. Then I start thinking about personnel and availability, because North Carolina star freshman Caleb Wilson is part of this conversation. Caleb Wilson has been out for a few games. Now here's where the thought process gets interesting. Because if this matchup plays out like the recent stretch we've seen, North Carolina has actually survived decently without him. There was that bad loss to NC State, which obviously stands out. But outside of that they beat Syracuse, beat Louisville, beat Virginia Tech, beat Clemson. So North Carolina without Caleb Wilson has still produced results in spots, but that bad loss to NC State is sitting there as a data point. And when I compare that to Duke's current form, this is where the separation starts showing up in my mind. Duke has won 9 of their last 10 games. Not only that, Duke has covered 5 straight games. And this is the current number 1 team in college basketball right now. So if I picture the momentum here, Duke's trajectory is just straight up. They're rolling. They're confident. They're beating quality teams in convincing ways. For example, they beat NC State by 29 in their last game. Now that same NC State team, North Carolina lost to NC State by 24. That comparison alone starts creating a gap in my head when I'm thinking about margin potential. Then you add another layer. Duke beat Virginia by 26. That's another dominant result. They also beat Michigan outright. So the profile here is a Duke team that is playing its best basketball right now. And when I combine that with the location, Cameron Indoor, again one of the toughest places to play in the country, and then I layer in the revenge element from that earlier game where North Carolina plus 6.5 stole it with a buzzer beater, I start picturing a scenario where Duke comes out extremely aggressive early. If this matchup plays out like Duke's recent stretch, where they beat NC State by 29 and beat Virginia by 26, then a number like Duke minus 15.5 doesn't feel crazy anymore. And yes, I know there's a possibility someone finds 14.5 at Bet Rivers or Valley Bet, but most sportsbooks showing 15.5 tells you the market expectation is still a large margin here. And when I combine Duke winning 9 of their last 10 games with Duke covering 5 straight games and the fact they're currently the number 1 team in college basketball, I keep coming back to the same scenario in my head. Duke controlling this game early, building momentum, and Cameron Indoor amplifying everything. So yeah, when I walk through the environment, the form, the comparative NC State results, the Caleb Wilson absence for a few games, and the revenge angle from that buzzer beater win earlier in the season, it all lines up the same way in my mind. That's why the lean sticks at Duke minus 15.5. Alabama versus Auburn, the lean here is Alabama laying the big number, lay the points with Alabama. Let me walk through this one because when I start connecting the numbers, the road trends, and the current situations for both teams, the picture becomes pretty clear in my head. So Alabama comes into this game 22-8 on the year and 13-7 against the number this season. Auburn on the other side is 16-4 on the year and also 13-7 against the number this season. So from a record perspective, both teams have respectable profiles, and both sitting at 13-7 against the number tells me neither team has been wildly mispriced throughout the year. Now the recent results are important context too. Alabama lost to Georgia 98-88 in their last matchup. Auburn beat LSU 88-74 in their last matchup. So you have Alabama coming off a loss and Auburn coming off a win. But if this matchup plays out like some of Auburn's road games lately, that's where the concern starts creeping into my mind. Because Auburn's road performance is where the issues really show up. When Auburn has gone on the road, the results have been rough. There was that close loss to Mississippi State by 6, but here's the key detail: Auburn was laying 6 points in that game. Outside of that, the road losses start stacking up in ugly ways. Auburn lost by double digits at Oklahoma. They lost by double digits at Mississippi State. They lost by 8 at Tennessee. And they didn't cover in any of those road games. That's a pattern that sticks with me because if this matchup plays out like those road environments, Auburn has struggled to stay within numbers. And the LSU game is interesting too because Auburn beat LSU 88-74, but that win over LSU was Auburn's first cover in over a month. So even when Auburn wins games recently, the consistency of staying inside the number hasn't really been there. Then I zoom out to the tournament context because that matters. Alabama has secured a top 4 spot in the SEC tournament. The position mainly determines who they play in the quarterfinals. So Alabama is locked into that structure but still positioning themselves. Auburn's situation is different. Auburn is trying to avoid falling into a difficult matchup. Their focus is seeding and their tournament path as they try to progress out of the first round of the SEC tournament. So both teams have motivation, but Alabama also has a national angle layered on top. Because right now Alabama is projected as a 4 seed in the latest bracketology report. A strong SEC tournament performance could move Alabama up to a 3 seed. So if this matchup plays out like a team trying to improve its national positioning, Alabama has a lot of incentive to make a statement here. And then the coaching note is part of the narrative too. Stephen Pearl in year 1 as coach. First-year situations sometimes come with volatility, especially when the team is already showing road struggles like losing by double digits at Oklahoma and losing by double digits at Mississippi State and losing by 8 at Tennessee without covering. So when I step back and visualize the game flow, one path I see here is Alabama responding to that 98-88 loss to Georgia with urgency. Alabama coming off a loss combined with Auburn's road pattern. That combination keeps pulling me toward a larger margin scenario. Because Auburn's road sample includes that close loss to Mississippi State by 6 while laying 6, then the double-digit loss at Oklahoma, double-digit loss at Mississippi State, and the 8-point loss at Tennessee with no covers in any of those games. And when a team's only recent cover was the 88-74 win over LSU, which was their first cover in over a month, I have a hard time projecting stability against a team like Alabama that's 22-8 overall and 13-7 against the number. So if this matchup plays out like Auburn's road profile combined with Alabama's motivation to strengthen that 4-seed projection and possibly climb to a 3-seed, the margin scenario makes sense in my head. That's what connects for me. Which is why the lean sticks at Alabama laying the big number, lay the points with Alabama. Alright. That wraps it up for all 4 matchups on the March 7th slate. Louisville vs Miami, UConn vs Marquette, North Carolina vs Duke, and Alabama vs Auburn. As always, this was analysis and opinion only, nothing guaranteed, just me working through how these games could realistically play out if the situations line up the way they look on paper. Now I'm curious how you guys are seeing these spots. Drop AZ in the comments and let me know which game stood out the most to you tonight, or if you're looking at one of these matchups a completely different way. And if you enjoyed the breakdown, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. We're pushing toward 2,000 subscribers on Beyond the Box Score, and every single one of you watching helps us get there. More college basketball breakdowns, more raw slate analysis, and more thinking out loud spots coming very soon.